leaders have paid tribute to Germany's former Chancellor Helmut Kohl during a ceremony inside the European Parliament in Strasbourg. A giant of post-war German politics, Kohl, who died last month, oversaw German reunification. He was also a major force behind European integration. Recalling the moment talks began to bring several Eastern European countries into the EU, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said, "During lunch, Kohl asked for permission to speak. Exceptionally, he asked for permission to speak because he usually took to the floor. He asked and said, obviously moved with tears, preventing him from speaking, that this very day of the start of the accession talks was one of the most wonderful moments in his life. To live through this historic moment of the coming together of Europe as German Federal Chancellor profoundly moved him in his heart."
German police have clashed with anti-capitalist protesters in Hamburg before the G20 summit. The trouble came as Chancellor Angela Merkel hosted world leaders for informal meetings at the venue nearby. Water cannons and pepper spray were used to disperse the demonstrators, some of whom attacked security forces with bottles and stones. One protester was seen being struck as he fought with officers.
Conference organizers hoped for consensus amongst the countries discussing the treaty, but it took a vote to approve it. 122 states in favor, only one, the Netherlands, against. Once 50 countries ratify the Nuclear Prohibition Treaty, atomic weapons will effectively be illegal in international law. But there's a problem. The world's 9 nuclear-armed states did not take part in the talks at all. 3 of them, the US, Britain and France, have said in a statement that they will never join the treaty. Speaking in March, Britain's UN ambassador said a nuclear-free world was worthy, but this was not the right approach.
Day 20 of his Justice March, and Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu still has a spring in his step. The 68-year-old leader of Turkey's Republican People's Party has often been criticized for being an ineffectual opposition party leader. Now Kılıçdaroğlu is galvanizing opposition to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his year-long crackdown on dissent.
This march has already made a difference. For 20 days, tens of thousands of people walking together, proclaiming the same message of justice, is a reflection of a growing awareness, and something positive is really emerging out of this.
Are learning more about those service members and where they were headed. Let's get to 10 News military reporter Hannah Mullins. Hannah, you've been looking into this. What have you found out?
Well, this was just a huge loss on home soil. I can tell you 15 of them were Marines. 1 was a Navy corpsman. The wreckage burned into the night, and the video is hard to watch because it's one of the deadliest military crashes in recent history. Now, the Marine Corps KC-130 took off from North Carolina. It was transporting troops and equipment like small arms, ammo, and weapons to El Centro. Now, the Hercules actually vanished from the radar over Mississippi. Witnesses heard a crackling noise and a boom, then saw it spiraling down.
Now to some breaking news from overseas, a deadly terror attack near one of Jerusalem's holy sites. Dramatic footage there you're looking at showing the shootout with police, and ABC's James Longman has all the details for us this morning. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Amy. Yes, 2 Israeli policemen were killed in East Jerusalem this morning. They were attacked by 3 Palestinians who then fled the scene. Take a look at this dramatic cell phone footage. It shows one of the attackers fighting with Israeli security before being shot. The attackers were shot dead by police inside the holy compound, which is known to Muslims as Haram al-Sharif and to Jews as Temple Mount. The 3 assailants were killed at one of the holiest sites in the world and one of the most politically sensitive. The attack happened just before Friday prayers, which have now been cancelled. That hasn't happened, we believe, since 1990, which has made the whole situation all the more tense. Incidents around Haram al-Sharif have stirred up Palestinian rage in the past, but authorities on both sides are doing their best to keep things calm.
A powerful earthquake has hit major Turkish and Greek tourist resorts on the Aegean Sea. The magnitude 6.7 quake struck at around 1:30 in the morning when most people were sleeping. Now, on the Greek island of Kos, 2 people are thought to have died in the Old Town when the walls of a building reportedly collapsed upon them. Many historical structures and hotels have also been damaged.
breaking news overnight, a horrifying discovery in a Walmart parking lot in San Antonio, Texas.
Shortly after 12:30 local time, authorities got a call from a Walmart employee who claimed to have been approached by somebody asking for water. When the fire department responded, they found a terrible scene in the sweltering trailer section of an 18-wheeler with many people dead, many more in serious or critical condition.
This is the moment when a suicide bomber detonated explosives, killing dozens and injuring many more in eastern Pakistan. What followed was a race to get the wounded to hospitals.
Flooding from monsoon rain in western India has swept away much that was in its path, leaving a rising death toll, streets swamped and vehicles submerged. Gujarat state is among the areas worst hit, the deluge stranding many and turning religious temples into new water-soaked attractions.
Arriving at St. James's Palace a short time ago, side by side, as we're accustomed to seeing them, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh. But this, come the autumn, will be the exception. The Duke has decided, finally, just a few weeks short of his 96th birthday, that it's time for him to step back from public duties. The palace says the decision has not been prompted by any particular concern about health, and indeed in recent months the Duke has been fulfilling a programme of engagements which belie his age.
Federal safety investigators say workers could not stop a natural gas leak before a deadly school explosion. The National Transportation Safety Board today released its preliminary report about what happened inside Minnehaha Academy. A natural gas leak led to a blast at the school's upper campus in Minneapolis, killing 2 staff members and hurting 10 others earlier this month.
A court in Chile has ruled that a law legalizing abortion in certain cases is constitutional. It means women will be able to seek an abortion when their life is in danger, when a fetus is unviable, or when a pregnancy results from rape. The ruling ends years of heated debate from opponents and was greeted with applause and chants from supporters of the bill.
News alert on the crash of a U.S. military plane off Australia. The U.S. Marine Corps now declaring as deceased the 3 missing Marines from the doomed MV-22 Osprey. This after search crews located the submerged wreckage 2 days after the Osprey went down into the sea off the coast of Australia. Most of the more than 24 military personnel aboard that aircraft were rescued.
15 votes in favor of more economic sanctions on North Korea. Its punishment for testing 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, in July. The U.S. drafted the resolution and thanked the other council members for their support, but said sanctions alone are not the answer.
The North Korean threat has not left us. It is rapidly growing more dangerous. We've seen 2 ICBMs fired in just the last month. Further action is required.
The death toll has risen to 13 in an earthquake in southwest China's Sichuan province. Officials have said that at least 5 of the dead were tourists. Rescue teams worked through the night as the number of injured also rose to more than 175. And as the sun came up, the effects were clear to see, with landslides and damaged buildings across the area. While some will be thankful for a lucky escape, for others it'll be another bitter reminder of the 2008 quake in the region, which killed more than 80,000 people.
Now, in the past hour, President Trump spoke to the media about the events in Charlottesville. Here's some of what he said.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. It's been going on for a long, long time. It has no place in America. What is vital now is a swift restoration of law and order and the protection of innocent lives.
Hundreds of acres of land underwater,
thousands of houses damaged by the floods. Floods caused by incessant rains that started on Friday have destroyed much of these fertile plains of Nepal. This village of Daria, outside the industrial town of Viratnagar, is finally rising above water after the rain stopped on Monday. 4 people died here.
Well, the Red Cross says more than 600 people are now missing and that more than 200 have been killed after heavy rains caused a severe mudslide in the West African nation of Sierra Leone. Witnesses say victims were sleeping early Monday when a hillside collapsed near Freetown. Aid agencies are evacuating people nearby.
Screams and panic tonight on Barcelona's most famous pedestrian street.
They're shooting. They're shooting.
An American tourist, Jack Davey from Los Angeles, recorded as she ran for her life.
We heard what sounded like gunshots, and we saw hundreds of people rushing towards us.
Totality, the spectacular astronomical show that captivated the world today. The moon completely blocking out the sun. Casper in Wyoming was the center of the universe, identified by astronomers as the best place in the US to see today's eclipse. Crowds had started to gather before sunrise.
We both live in Derby, so we've travelled from the UK to be here.
Today's eclipse was an all-American event. The first sight of it came on the Pacific coast in Oregon, where thousands of people waiting in Salem plunged into darkness. Eventually, the totality got to Charleston in South Carolina, where people bid farewell to the incredible celestial event before it moved into the Atlantic Ocean.
Rescuers in Macau are searching for people trapped in submerged cars after Typhoon Hato rampaged through the Chinese territory, trailing destruction in its wake. The strongest storm since 1968 killed at least 9 people, with more still missing. Winds of up to 200 kilometers per hour sent sheets of glass flying and severely damaged water supply in the offshore gambling hub.
Tonight, along the Texas Gulf Coast, utter devastation. In the town of Rockport, entire blocks are decimated.
We have nothing left.
And Amanda Evans is shaken. She was caught in the eye of the storm.
By 1 o'clock, it was terrible. It was so, I was crying. I was on my knees praying that we made it.
Her home gone.
Why didn't you evacuate?
We just didn't have the money.
The island of Barbuda was once a Caribbean paradise. Now it is lost. Hurricane Irma has reduced it to rubble. Homes are unrecognisable. The ruins lie scattered, torn and ripped apart. Having survived the worst storm in living memory and knowing another is on the way, people are exhausted, hungry and just desperate to leave.
We begin this hour with breaking news. A magnitude 8 earthquake has hit off the southern coast of Mexico. It hit near the southwest town of Pijiapan in the state of Chiapas late on Thursday. A tsunami alert has been issued for several Central American countries, including Guatemala, Honduras, and Costa Rica. Tremors were felt as far as the capital, Mexico City, nearly 1,000 kilometers away. There were reports of buildings shaking violently. People ran out onto the streets in panic, and in some areas of the capital, electricity went out.
Another news this morning, Mexico has been dealt with a deadly 1-2 punch, with Hurricane Katia making landfall overnight as a Category 1 storm on the eastern Gulf Coast 1 day after an 8.1 earthquake struck the country's southern Pacific coast. Around 70 aftershocks have since been recorded. That quake, the strongest to hit Mexico in more than a century. At least 61 people have died in the twin national emergencies, with the death toll likely to rise.
Torrential rain across Italy has triggered flooding that's killed at least 6 people in the Tuscan port town of Livorno. The Italian news agency ANSA said the bodies of a 4-year-old boy, his parents and grandfather were found in the flooded basement of their home. Several people are also reported to be missing.
As darkness fell this evening, a tube train stood still on the track in West London. It is the scene of a terrorist attack, and one that has given the government reason to change its assessment of the terror threat.
The protests in St. Louis over Friday's divisive verdict ended in violence for a third night, with police ordering demonstrators to disperse. Earlier, more than 1,000 people had marched through the city, determined to make their point peacefully.
If we don't get it, shut it down! Whose streets? Our streets!
They're upset over the killing of a black man by a white officer almost 6 years ago. Anthony Lamar Smith fled from police in December 2011 after an alleged drug deal outside a fast food restaurant. Shortly after the chase began, Officer Jason Stockley was filmed saying this. Smith was shot 5 times. During the trial, prosecutors allege Stockley planted a gun in Smith's car after he shot him.
The first pictures now coming in from Puerto Rico after taking a direct hit. Hurricane Maria slamming into the island, and as you heard, one official saying the island is destroyed. Maria is the first Category 4 to hit there in nearly a century. 150-mile-an-hour winds ripping buildings apart, knocking out power everywhere. All of the electricity is out tonight. People ordered to stay inside until at least tomorrow amid fears of more massive flooding to come. And the satellite image tonight showing Maria's massive size, dwarfing the island. No part of it was spared.
In Mexico City, they are struggling to save lives. This is one of the most densely packed places on Earth. More than 20 million people live here, and this earthquake has hit them hard.
We left, and when we left, the building started collapsing. 30 seconds after we left, the building came down.
In the minutes after the quake, columns of dust rose into the air, hinting at the devastation. In the capital alone, dozens of buildings, including schools and office blocks, were destroyed or damaged. The president says it's a national emergency.
Today, the doors of the Burnett Chapel Church of Christ were boarded up, flowers left outside, just feet from this blood-stained SUV parked out front.
That man just walked up with a shotgun, and people were hiding and stuff, but he shot my best friend.
25-year-old Emmanuel Cadega Sampson has been arrested and charged with homicide. According to an affidavit, the U.S. resident, originally from Sudan, told police that he parked here at 10:55 a.m. yesterday and, quote, fired upon the church. Local police records show that Sampson had been known to authorities since at least January, with officers responding to reports of verbal abuse and suicidal threats.
Segregated and secretive, Saudi women lead very different lives to men. Until now, they've been forbidden by law to drive. Last night, that changed. The country's aging King Salman issued a decree. From June next year, women can finally take to the roads. For Saudi Arabia, this is huge.
Crushed against the steps of this railway overpass are the bodies of commuters flattened as a stampede of passengers pushed them to the floor. Mumbai police say falling concrete hit part of the handrail and people panicked, thinking the bridge was collapsing. A monsoon downpour made things worse, as there were also people sheltering from the rain.
Two disturbing attacks, one caught on video. The first, 8:15 p.m. Saturday near Stadium. Surveillance cameras show a white Chevy Malibu plowing through barricades and slamming into an Edmonton police officer. Authorities say the driver got out of the car, viciously attacked the officer with a knife, then fled the scene. The officer's injuries are not life-threatening. Police say a crumpled ISIS flag was found in the car. The second attack, 4 hours later, not far away. Police stopped a U-Haul at a checkpoint. The driver sped off, ramming into a crowd of pedestrians, injuring 4 people before it flipped over. Police say the driver resisted arrest, so officers tased him.